Picture this, it's early morning, the sun is just starting to warm your balcony, and you step outside with your coffee to find yourself surrounded by a waterfall of color. The sweet scent of blooms fills the air, butterflies dance between the petals, and honestly, you can't believe this is the same plain, empty balcony you had just months ago. That transformation? It happened on my own balcony, and I'm still amazed every single day. I'm here with Planify Daily, and today I'm sharing my personal top 10 flowers that turned my overlooked outdoor space into my favorite room in the house. These are the showstoppers I've grown, tested, and fallen completely in love with over multiple seasons. Let's count them down. Coming in at number 10, we have the cheerful, reliable marigold. Now, I'll be honest, I used to think marigolds were just basic garden flowers. But when I planted a mix of orange and gold varieties in some simple pots on my balcony, they became my little rays of sunshine that bloomed nonstop from late spring all the way until the first frost. I remember one particularly hot July when everything else looked stressed, but my marigolds just kept pumping out flowers like nothing was wrong. They're that tough. Plus, that distinctive scent, it actually kept aphids away from my other plants. Win-win. Here, what I learned growing them. Full sun is their happy place. I gave mine at least 6 hours of direct light. They're not fussy about water. I let the soil dry out between waterings, which is perfect for busy weeks when I forget. Any well-draining potting mix works fine. Deadhead the spent blooms every few days, just pinch them off and you'll get twice as many flowers. I grew mine in 8-inch pots, but they also look stunning in railing planters mixed with trailing plants. The compact French marigold varieties are perfect for smaller balconies. My wow moment? The day I noticed a little bee absolutely covered in orange pollen, buzzing happily from flower to flower. These blooms bring life to your space in more ways than one. At number 9, meet Verbena, the underrated superstar that completely surprised me. I planted trailing verbena on a whim one spring because I loved the jewel-toned colors at the nursery. Purple, magenta, deep red, they looked almost too vibrant to be real. Within weeks, these plants created this incredible carpet of color that spilled over my railing like a floral waterfall. What I love most? They're heat lovers. During those sweltering August days when I was worried everything would wilt, the verbena thrived. The flowers seemed to multiply in the heat, creating these dense clusters that butterflies couldn't resist. My care routine was simple. Full sun, the more the better. I watered them regularly but made sure my containers had excellent drainage because verbena hates wet feet. Here's a tip I discovered. Give them a light trim every few weeks, just shearing back the stems by a few inches. This kept them bushy instead of leggy, and they rewarded me with even more blooms. I grew mine in 12-inch hanging baskets, and they looked spectacular mixed with white bacopa for contrast. Feed them every 2 weeks with a balanced liquid fertilizer and they'll bloom all season long. The wow moment? Standing on my balcony one evening as the setting sun lit up the magenta blooms, making them glow like jewels. My neighbor actually asked if they were artificial because the color was so intense. Number 8 is the delicate beauty that stole my heart, Lobelia. When I first saw those tiny blue flowers, I thought, these are too dainty for my windy balcony. But I tried them anyway in a partially shaded corner, and wow, I was so wrong. These little plants created the most ethereal blue cascade I've ever seen. I grew the trailing variety and it created this soft, cloud-like effect draping over my pots. The blue was unlike anything else in my garden, true sky blue, almost electric in the right light. I also tried white and purple varieties and they were equally stunning. Here what worked for me. Lobelia prefers part shade to full sun, especially in hot climates. On my balcony, I placed them where they got morning sun and afternoon shade perfect. They like consistent moisture, so I check them daily during hot spells because they're quick to wilt. But here's the thing, they bounce right back after watering. Midsummer, they can look a bit tired. I learned to give them a haircut, cutting them back by half, and within 2 weeks they came back fuller and covered in fresh blooms. It's like hitting the reset button. I grew mine in 10-inch hanging baskets and smaller pots along my railing. They look incredible paired with white alyssum or yellow bidens. My wow moment? A hummingbird visited my lobelia on a cool June morning. I had no idea they were attracted to these tiny flowers, but there it was, hovering and feeding. I stood completely still, mesmerized. At lucky number 7, we have the exotic-looking fuchsia. I'll never forget the first time I saw fuchsia blooms up close. They look like tiny ballerinas in pink and purple tutus dancing in the breeze. I thought they'd be high-maintenance divas, but once I figured out what they liked, they became one of my most reliable performers. On my balcony, fuchsias brought elegance and movement. Every time a breeze came through, those pendant flowers would sway, catching the light. And the hummingbirds, they visited almost daily once they discovered my fuchsia baskets. Here's my tried-and-true care approach. Fuchsias prefer bright indirect light or morning sun with afternoon shade. I learned the hard way that full afternoon sun scorches them. Keep the soil consistently moist but not waterlogged. I watered mine every single day in summer. They're heavy feeders, so I gave them a diluted liquid fertilizer once a week. Deadheading is minimal because the flowers kind of clean themselves, but I did remove any brown blooms to keep them looking fresh. Watch for spent flowers that develop into small berries, pinch those off to encourage more blooms. I grew mine in 12-inch hanging baskets with a rich, well-draining potting mix. The trailing varieties are spectacular, creating these cascading columns of flowers. My wow moment? Coming home after a stressful day to find a hummingbird perched on the edge of my fuchsia basket just resting between sips. It felt like my balcony had become a real sanctuary. At number 6, I'm featuring begonias. Begonias, the shade-loving champions that saved my north-facing balcony section. Before begonias, I struggled to find anything that would bloom in my shadier spots. Then I discovered tuberous begonias with their rose-like blooms and wax begonias with their glossy leaves, and everything changed. These plants proved that you don't need full sun to have a flower-filled balcony. The colors I've grown range from pure white to coral, bright pink, red, and even two-toned varieties. The tuberous types gave me these huge, show-stopping flowers that looked almost too perfect to be real, while the wax begonias created a constant carpet of smaller blooms with beautiful bronze or green foliage. My begonia care secrets. Part shade to full shade for most varieties. My tuberous begonias got morning light and were perfectly happy. Water when the top inch of soil feels dry. They hate sitting in water but also hate drying out completely. I found that checking them every other day worked well. Use a light hand with fertilizer every 3 weeks was plenty. One thing I learned, begonias are sensitive to overhead watering, which can cause powdery mildew. I watered at the base of the plants, and this kept the leaves healthy and disease-free. I used 10 to 14-inch pots with excellent drainage. The dragon wing varieties I tried got huge and looked amazing in larger containers. My wow moment? Realizing that my shady corner, which I'd written off as a lost cause, had become the most lush, tropical-looking part of my entire balcony. The begonias made it feel like a secret garden. At number 5, we have the heat-loving butterfly magnet, Lantana. When I planted my first lantana, I had no idea it would become such a wildlife hub. These plants have these incredible clustered flowers that change color as they age, so you get yellows, oranges, pinks, and purples all on the same plant at the same time. It's like a living sunset. On my balcony, lantana brought constant activity. Butterflies, bees, even occasional hummingbirds. It was like Grand Central Station for pollinators. I'd sit out there with my morning coffee just watching the show. Here what I discovered. Full sun is essential, the more the better. Lantana is incredibly drought-tolerant once established. I could skip a day or two of watering during hot spells and they'd be completely fine. In fact, they seem to bloom even more when kept slightly on the dry side. Well-draining soil is a must. Deadheading isn't strictly necessary, but I did trim off spent flower clusters to keep them looking tidy and to encourage new blooms. Midsummer, I gave them a light pruning to prevent them from getting too leggy, and they came back bushier than ever. I grew trailing lantana in hanging baskets and upright varieties in 12-inch pots. They can get quite large, so give them space. Fair warning, lantana can be toxic to pets, so if you have curious cats or dogs visiting your balcony, skip this one or keep it well out of reach. My wow moment? Counting 7 different butterfly species visiting my lantana in a single afternoon. I felt like a wildlife documentary was happening right outside my door, and it made me appreciate these plants so much more than just their beauty. At number 4, meet Million Bells. Million Bells, also called Calibrachoa, the plant that lives up to its name. These look like tiny petunias, but they bloom even more profusely, and they're what I call set-it-and-forget-it plants. When I planted my first Million Bells basket, I thought the garden center had exaggerated how many flowers it would produce. They hadn't. Within weeks, the plant was absolutely smothered in blooms. I've grown them in cherry red, bright yellow, coral, purple, and white. The flowers are small, about the size of a quarter, but there are so many of them that they create this incredible solid carpet of color. From a distance, you can barely see the foliage. My care routine was surprisingly simple. Full sun, at least 6 hours daily. Water regularly, they prefer consistent moisture but good drainage. Here's the beauty, you don't need to deadhead them. The spent flowers just kind of disappear on their own. Feed them every week to 2 weeks with a liquid fertilizer because they're producing so many blooms. I found that Million Bells are perfect for mixed containers. I combine them with upright plants in the center and let the Million Bells spill over the edges. They're also fantastic in hanging baskets where they create these perfect domes of color. The trailing varieties I grew reached about 12 inches long, creating a beautiful cascade without being too wild or unruly. My wow moment? Coming back from a week-long vacation, worried my plants would look sad and neglected, and finding my Million Bells looking even better than when I left. My neighbor had watered them once and they just kept blooming like champions. That's when I knew these were true balcony superstars. We're in the top 3 now, and at number 3, I have to honor the classic geranium. I know what you're thinking, geraniums are everywhere, what's special about them? But hear me out. After growing dozens of flower varieties, I keep coming back to geraniums because they just deliver. Consistently, beautifully, with almost no drama. On my balcony, geraniums became my anchor plants. I used bright red ones in classic terracotta pots for that timeless look, coral ones in modern containers, and white ones to brighten shady corners. The zonal geraniums with their banded leaves added interest even when not in bloom, and the ivy geraniums I trailed over my railing created waterfalls of color. Here, what made them thrive? Full sun is best, though they tolerate part shade better than most. I watered them when the top inch of soil felt dry. They're pretty forgiving if you forget occasionally. Good drainage is important. Deadhead spent flower clusters regularly by snapping them off at the base, and you'll get continuous blooms all season. Feed them every 2 to 3 weeks with a balanced fertilizer. One tip I learned: remove any yellowing leaves promptly to prevent disease and keep the plants looking fresh. I grew zonal geraniums in 10 to 12-inch pots and ivy geraniums in hanging baskets or railing planters. They both performed beautifully. My wow moment? Realizing that my geraniums planted in April were still blooming prolifically in October through rain, heat waves, and cool nights. I brought a few pots indoors before the first frost, and they kept blooming through the winter on my sunny windowsill. That's dedication. Silver medal position at number 2 goes to Surfinia Petunias, also called Surfina, the supercharged trailing petunias that changed my balcony game. When I upgraded from regular petunias to Surfinias, I thought the difference would be minimal. I was so wrong. These plants are bred specifically for vigor, disease resistance, and unstoppable blooming. They're like petunias on steroids in the best possible way. On my balcony, Surfinias created these breathtaking cascades that reached over 3 feet long by midsummer. I planted purple ones that looked almost iridescent in certain light, hot pink ones that you could spot from across the street, and white ones with delicate veining. They transformed my railing into a flower-covered curtain. Here, how I kept them spectacular. Full sun is crucial, 6 to 8 hours minimum. Water daily during hot weather because these vigorous growers are thirsty plants. Here, the key difference from regular petunias: Surfinias need more food. I fertilized them every single week with a bloom-boosting fertilizer, and they rewarded me with explosive growth and non-stop flowers. You don't need to deadhead them, which saves so much time. They're self-cleaning. Mid-season, if they start looking stretched out, give them a light trim and they'll bounce back even fuller. I planted them in 14 to 16-inch hanging baskets and large railing planters, and they filled every inch of space. Use a high-quality potting mix because they're in those containers all season. My wow moment? Standing at street level looking up at my second floor balcony and barely being able to see the railing through the purple cascade of Surfinia blooms. Neighbors stopped to take photos. That's when I knew I'd created something special. And here we are, number 1. The flower that started my balcony garden obsession and has never let me down, classic trailing petunias. These are the original, the icons, the flowers that made me fall in love with balcony gardening in the first place. My first season, I planted just 3 hanging baskets of mixed trailing petunias, and within weeks I understood what everyone was raving about. The color range is incredible. I've grown deep purple ones that look almost black, magenta ones that glow in evening light, soft pink ones, pure white, striped varieties, and ones with ruffled edges. Every single one delivered that classic petunia charm, trumpet-shaped flowers, sweet fragrance on warm evenings, and blooms that just keep coming. My proven care method. Full sun is non-negotiable for the best performance, at least 6 hours daily. Water them regularly, they like consistent moisture. Deadheading makes a difference with classic petunias. I spent a few minutes every few days pinching off spent blooms and it kept them flowering heavily. Feed them every 10 to 14 days with a good liquid fertilizer. Midsummer, if they get leggy, cut them back by about a third. They'll look rough for a week, but then they'll come back bushier and more beautiful than ever. I use 12 to 14-inch hanging baskets and railing planters. Plant 2 to 3 plants per large basket for a full, lush look. My ultimate wow moment? Sitting on my balcony on a warm June evening, surrounded by cascading petunias in full bloom, breathing in their sweet scent, and realizing that this space, this beautiful sanctuary I'd created, made me genuinely happy every single day. That's the power of these flowers. Before we wrap up, let me share a few bonus lessons I've learned from years of balcony flower gardening. Lesson 1: Container choice matters. I always use containers with drainage holes. This is non-negotiable. For hanging baskets, I prefer ones with built-in water reservoirs because they need less frequent watering. Self-watering planters changed my life during busy weeks. Lesson 2: Color combinations. I learned that mixing different bloom colors of the same flower type looks more cohesive than mixing too many different flower varieties. For example, purple and white petunias together create impact without chaos. Add a trailing foliage plant like ivy or sweet potato vine for contrast. Lesson 3: Wind protection. Balconies can be windy. I secured hanging baskets with strong hooks and chains, and I positioned taller containers against walls where they're more protected. Staking helps too. Lesson 4: Simple feeding routine. I keep a liquid fertilizer mixed in a watering can at half strength, and I feed my flowers every time I water during peak bloom season. It's easier than remembering a separate feeding schedule, and they love the consistent nutrients. These small adjustments made a huge difference in how my balcony garden performed overall. These 10 flowers completely transformed my balcony from a space I barely used into my favorite place to spend time. Every morning, I step out with my coffee and I'm greeted by color, fragrance, and visiting butterflies. It become my daily dose of joy. The best part? You don't need a huge budget or tons of experience. Start with just 1 or 2 of these flowers, learn what works on your specific balcony, and build from there. I started with 3 hanging baskets and look where I am now. So here's my question for you: which flower from today's countdown are you most excited to try? Drop the number in the comments below. I'd love to hear what caught your eye. If you enjoyed this video and want daily plant inspiration, tips, and balcony garden ideas, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an upload here on Plantify Daily. Thanks so much for spending these few minutes with me. Now go create your own balcony paradise, one flower at a time. Happy planting, and I'll see you in the next video.